Okay, moving on to the next segment of today's show. I wanted to talk a little bit about a team in the Big Ten that over the last couple weeks, and more specifically over the last couple days, this is a team that has really impressed me. And this is a team that has really proven the narrative of experience matters in college basketball to be true. And that is Greg Gard and his Wisconsin Badgers. And I'll admit, I've had a very up and down opinion in terms of Greg Gard and how good he is as a coach. I remember when he first took over for Bo Ryan a couple years ago. Bo retired midway through the season. I thought he was a very good coach. He pulled that big upset over Villanova. But before last year, this Wisconsin program was struggling a little bit. And to be honest, I wasn't necessarily sure if Greg Gard was going to be the right guy for the job. But over the last year and change, this guy has really proven to be one of the better coaches in not only the Big Ten, but in all of college basketball. And I was super impressed with the way the Wisconsin Badgers on Christmas Day were able to go into East Lansing, a place where historically they never win. This was the first time since 2004 that the Wisconsin Badgers were able to go into East Lansing, into the Breslin Center, and win. And I was just super impressed with the effort of Wisconsin. I say it so many times, and this is during a normal season, let alone a COVID season, where the whole schedule in the preseason was messed up. Some teams were obviously getting to campus before others. And I feel like when you look at Wisconsin, this is a team that returned everyone from last year's squad that won the Big Ten. Let's keep that in mind. Besides Brevin Pritzel, who was a sixth-man type, and he was a consistent scorer off the bench. But really, besides him, the Badgers did return everyone. And I actually did pick the Wisconsin Badgers to win the Big Ten in the preseason. Now, a lot of people have been up and on and off that bandwagon since the start of the season. You remember for the first week and change of the season, Illinois looked like they could be one of the best teams in the Big Ten when they went into Duke and won. They competed with Baylor. Obviously, a lot of people have been on the Iowa bandwagon for a very long time. We'll get into the game against Minnesota a little bit later in the show and what exactly Hawkeye fans should be thinking right now. But at the same time, if you were going to ask me right now, Zach, who is the best team in the Big Ten, I'm not really sure if it's even a debate right now. It has to be the Wisconsin Badgers. But when you have a COVID offseason like we've had in 2020, an offseason where there are a lot of question marks that could possibly rise in terms of team chemistry, in terms of getting a guy eligible midway through the season. There are a lot of teams in college basketball, especially now in December, that are still trying to work through all of their holes. Teams that are still trying to gain chemistry and improve that chemistry as they get more and more experience playing with each other. But I feel like a team like the Wisconsin Badgers aren't really on that boat. I totally understand that when people watch college basketball, right, a lot of the reason why some people watch is to see the Cade Cunninghams of the world or to see the Zion Williamsons of the world while he was playing at Duke. Guys like that really do attract the casual basketball viewer to watch our sport of college basketball. But at the same time, for a guy like me that loves the sport and has been watching for so long and has seen, even though once in a blue moon we have a Zion Williamson or an Anthony Davis, it's very rare that we have a team like Wisconsin who brings everyone back from the year prior, and at least to start off, they look very good and they look locked in. And it's funny because going back to what I said in the beginning of this segment when I mentioned Greg Gard and how I was a little bit skeptical of the way his program was trending over the last couple of years, I, to be honest with you, wasn't necessarily sure that Greg Gard would be able to keep this run going at Wisconsin. However, at the same time, over the last year and change, the Badgers have really proven me wrong. Not a lot of people will realize this because of just how abruptly the season ended last year, but last year, the Big Ten was really just as good as the league is right now. It was such a deep league with a lot of very good teams, and somehow, someway, last year, the Wisconsin Badgers actually ended up winning the Big Ten in the regular season. And I'll admit, going into last season, I was not very high on the Badgers just because if you remember the team 2 years ago, they were so Ethan Happ dependent. Any Badger fan would tell you that without Ethan Happ, they were going to be worried what this Wisconsin team would look like building around guys like Trice and Davison and Reavers. And at the time, they didn't even know if Micah Potter would be a big-time contributor yet. But the Wisconsin Badgers have been really, really impressive over the last year and change. Now, last year, the even more impressive thing was they didn't get off to that great of a start. They lose to St. Mary's. They lose to Richmond. They lose to New Mexico. They lose to NC State. The Badgers had a 3-game losing streak during non-conference play last year, and then all of a sudden, they finished their regular season winning 8 games in a row, including a road win at Michigan, including a road win at Indiana, including a home win against Rutgers, a home win against Purdue, a home win against Ohio State. And the Badgers, towards the back end of last season, were one of the more consistent teams in college basketball. And then you go over to this year, I feel like a lot of people going into this season, they knew that Wisconsin was going to be good. I think most people projected Wisconsin in the preseason to be a top 25 team in that range. But people were concerned about their ceiling, right? A lot of times, and I've discussed this on the show before, when teams like Wisconsin, who are good, but are returning their whole squad back from year prior, but doesn't really have a NBA talent, there are going to be a lot of fans that say, when they are projecting how exactly that team is going to do, the fans will say, oh, even though they do return everyone back, I'm not necessarily sure how high their ceiling is, because if all of these guys playing together peaked last year, and I guess you could have made the argument that Wisconsin peaked last year when they won the Big Ten, people ask, okay, how much better exactly could they be? But I am actually on the opposite end of the spectrum in this conversation, especially in a season like this one, where teams have not had as much time as they normally do to practice with each other. The Wisconsin Badgers, watching them throughout their first couple of games, it is clear to me that this team knows how to play with each other. The chemistry is there, and to be honest with you, so are the results. Wisconsin starts their season off with a couple big wins, not really over anyone noticeable. They beat Eastern Illinois, they beat Arkansas Pine Bluff, and they beat Green Bay. And then on December 4th, they go into Marquette, a rivalry game, and the Golden Eagles are a good team that have been very competitive throughout the start of the season. But Wisconsin loses that game when Micah Potter forgets to box out on a free throw. Justin Lewis tips it in, and Wisconsin loses that game to Marquette. And I do feel like there were a lot of people that after that game were kind of hopping off the Badgers bandwagon. As I said, during that time, Illinois, Iowa, Michigan State, even Rutgers looked like they could be one of the big-time challengers in this Big Ten, and maybe one of those teams would jump Wisconsin and win the league. But since that loss against Marquette, this is a Badger team that has won 5 games in a row, including a win over Rhode Island, who, they're good. It's not a big-time win by any means, but that's a quality win. They also beat Loyola Chicago, who is one of the better teams in the Missouri Valley. And then here's when things start to get real interesting here for the Badgers. They play Louisville in a makeup game for the Big Ten ACC Challenge, and they win 85-48. We saw Louisville play against Kentucky on Saturday, and we'll get to that game in a little bit. But Louisville is a solid basketball team. Wisconsin beats them by 37. Micah Potter drops 20. That was a super impressive win. Then they play Nebraska, and to be honest with you, Wisconsin did not get off to a very good start in that game. Wisconsin could not score the ball for their lives early in that game, but still they turn it up in the second half and find a way to win by 14 points over Nebraska by a final score of 67-53. But then on Christmas Day against Michigan State, this is when it really hit me that the Wisconsin Badgers are a team that not only I think are going to win the Big Ten, but this is a Wisconsin team that could make a deep run in March. The Wisconsin Badgers, they are a very good basketball program, and Bo Ryan and Greg Gard have done a phenomenal job building and continuing that culture over the last couple years. So we all know Wisconsin is very good. But did you know that before Christmas Day 2020 against Michigan State, the last time the Badgers won a game in the Breslin Center, 2004. That is nuts to me. And it shows me that if the 2020 Badgers could go on the road, and I understand there are no fans, so it's a different environment, but at the same time, there's no denying it is hard to go on the road in Big Ten play and win games, whether there are fans or not. And this Wisconsin team, who didn't even play great in the first half, somehow, someway, finds a way to go into Michigan State and win, and they were led by D'Mitrik Trice. He drops 29 points in this one, and you could tell when you were watching that game. Every single time he was shooting, you knew the ball was going in. When you look at the Wisconsin Badgers and the rest of their starting lineup, listen to this. When you look at the ages of Wisconsin's starting lineup, D'Mitrik Trice is 24. Aleem Ford is 24. Micah Potter is 22. Nate Reuvers is 22. Brad Davison is 21. That is a larger age combo in terms of total years. That is a larger age in terms of years than the Chicago Bulls, the NBA team. And even though the casual fan watches college basketball to see the Cade Cunninghams and to see the Zion Williamsons, me knowing that experience wins and experience matters in this sport, I see that Wisconsin has a team full of older dudes that, to be honest, are just more mature and more developed than many other teams in the country. That tells me that this Badgers squad is a scary, scary team, and they are a team to watch going forward. Another kid I wanted to talk about quickly for the Badgers is freshman Jonathan Davis. This is a kid that is coming off the bench for the Badgers. I absolutely love his game, and I think by the time we hit March, he will be ready to make a big-time impact for the Badgers, whether it's coming off the bench in that six-man role or maybe an even bigger one. But D'Mitrik Trice, Aleem Ford, Nate Reuvers, Brad Davison, these are all guys that have been in this Wisconsin program for years now, and they just know how to win games. They know how to get the job done, and Wisconsin is one of the best teams in the country right now. Greg Gard deserves a lot of credit. He's done a phenomenal job keeping the culture within this team, and if you ask me right now, Zach, who is the best team in the Big Ten, and we all know just how good of a league the Big Ten is, my answer would be Greg Gard and the Badgers.